Hello, this is Bernie Wolfsdorf, Managing Partner of WR Immigration. Today we presented a webinar regarding the new proclamation banning entry of nationals from 19 countries. I am now updating the commentary to clarify an errata in the presentation. And by the way, this is slide 7. It accurately states that the restrictions apply only to foreign nationals who meet both of the following conditions. One, that they're outside the United States on the effective date, and two, most importantly, they do not have a valid visa as of that date. Therefore, individuals who are already in the US on June 9 or who are abroad but hold a valid visa on that date are most likely not subject to the ban. I have conservatively recommended that people seek to enter before June 9 at 12:01 Eastern Time. I believe that is still good advice, but it is clear to most that people who hold a valid visa on that date, again, are likely not subject to the ban. And in addition, I want to point out the proclamation indicates that no immigrant or non-immigrant visa issued before the applicable effective date shall be revoked pursuant to the proclamation, therefore making it clear that the visa is valid to seek entry and board. This is an important point. So to repeat, proclamation at section 4A indicates that the suspension of and limitation of entry pursuant to sections 2 and 3 of this proclamation shall apply only to foreign nationals of the designated countries who, and reading this from the plain language, meet both of these criteria. So somebody who holds a valid visa is, according to the proclamation, able to entry after June 9. We still have to see if somebody has a visa that's valid for 3, 4, 5 years, that can be used. But again, the clarification indicates that it can. Thank you so much, and I apologize for any inconvenience based on this unduly conservative interpretation. Thank you again. Hi, everyone. This is Bernie Wolfsdorf. I am the Managing Partner of WR Immigration. It is a great pleasure to have you join us today. Joining me today is my partner, Ceri Koski. She manages the Denver office. And my partner, Avi Friedman, who has suffered with me for 28 years and is a consular guru. We are going to talk about the new travel bans, calling them 4.0 and 5.0. We had 3 effective bans under the prior administration. I am not comparing them to the COVID bans because, quite frankly, those were relatively easy to get national interest waivers. This is a new framework we're living in. So we need to compare this to the earlier, I think people referred to them as primarily Muslim bans. I'm now referring to these as bans 4.0 and 5.0. These bans were announced last night. So we've been working diligently to review them, update them. And I will also encourage people to follow our newsletter. We are going to do another follow-up on these bans next week. So we will notify you and send you a link so that you have the most up-to-date and current information. Our standard disclaimer: this is not legal advice. Visa law at Wolfsdorf is actually my email. So if you have nice things to say, use that one. If not, send them to Avi. And a little bit about our firm: 10 offices, approximately 200 people. I claim that we have the best technology in the industry, but I don't want to do a sales pitch today. That is what I call a fake picture of me when I was 10 years younger. But I still got the same smile, Ceri, thank you for joining us, and Avi, the consular guru. Ceri's focus today will be more on the corporate impact, what you should be doing as an employer now, before the 9th, 12:01 a.m. So, Ceri's focus will be corporate. Avi's and I will focus on the general picture, including students, which is a very big part of our practice, universities, etc. This is more or less a roadmap. I didn't really get to cover it. It's not exactly in this order. What's the proclamation, general conditions, exceptions, full entry ban, partial entry ban, waivers, and the Harvard ban, which, of course, has a long saga. The good news on the Harvard ban is I understand we do have a preliminary injunction. I'm going to let the cat out of the bag nice and early. My prediction, and I've always been good at winning the lotteries, my prediction is the Harvard ban is possibly, likely, praying, will be enjoined as part of the current PI preliminary injunction. It's maybe unduly optimistic, but I don't believe that's constitutional. The other bans, I'm not that positive. 212F has been broadly interpreted by the Supreme Court. After 3 attempts, the Trump administration has refined this ban, and I think it's going to be a battle. So that's my 15-second version of what's ultimately going to happen. We'll debate that. And of course, I do not have a crystal ball. Restricting the entry of foreign nationals to protect the United States from foreign terrorists and other national security and public safety threats. Current legislation gives the State Department and the Secretary of State enormous powers in order to decide who may be admitted to the U.S. Less so DHS, but then again, they deal with CBP and USCIS. Obviously, the visa side is critical. For those who don't understand immigration law, the visa allows you to present yourself to an inspection officer, board a plane, but the admission process is governed by CBP, Customs and Border Protection. And once you're in the US, of course, USCIS takes over. And then we've got ICE doing the enforcement. But what we are seeing today is not just ICE doing the enforcement. It's a broad range of agencies working together to implement the president's goal and desire of mass deportations. We are not doing politics today. We are lawyers. I'm here to explain the law and to advise to the best of our ability what the law says, what the exceptions are, and then as lawyers to try and make predictions as to how this is eventually going to impact all of you. Again, I'm going to cover the general stuff. Avi will do a bit of a deep dive into the waivers, and Ceri will concentrate and focus on what corporate employers need to do now in regard to their foreign nationals who may be outside the United States. I'm encouraging everybody with the visa to get in now, to book a ticket now if you have a valid visa and could be impacted. I believe that you will be able to enter the United States. You are almost certainly going to get sent to secondary, but we believe that you are eligible to enter despite the ban if you enter before the deadline. Pointing out as well that entry could be by airplane or pre-flight inspection. I'm sure Dublin, UAE, where else do they have pre-flight? Oh, in the Canadian posts, right? So those are pre-flight inspection. So that's a good thing in a way, because if you don't want to be detained in the US by CBP. It'd be better to be refused admission by the airport. My expectation is the airlines are going to be extremely confused as they were last time. And I was nagging Avi and Ceri that maybe we need to publish a pocket letter. What is a pocket letter? It's something you put in your pocket in case you get questioned, detailing why you are eligible for admission before the current deadline. Of course, everybody seeking admission has to meet all admissibility criteria, not just these new travel bans. Today, we presented a webinar regarding the new proclamation banning entry of nationals from 19 countries. I am now updating the commentary to clarify an errata in the presentation. And by the way, this is slide 7. It accurately states that the restrictions apply only to foreign nationals who meet both of the following conditions. 1, that they're outside the United States on the effective date, and 2, most importantly, they do not have a valid visa as of that date. Therefore, individuals who are already in the US on June 9 or who are abroad but hold a valid visa on that date are most likely not subject to the ban. I have conservatively recommended that people seek to enter before June 9 at 12:01 Eastern Time. I believe that is still good advice, but it is clear to most that people who hold a valid visa on that date, again, are likely not subject to the ban. And in addition, I want to point out the proclamation indicates that no immigrant or non-immigrant visa issued before the applicable effective date shall be revoked pursuant to the proclamation, therefore making it clear that the visa is valid to seek entry and board. This is an important point. So to repeat, proclamation at section 4A indicates that the suspension of and limitation of entry pursuant to sections 2 and 3 of this proclamation shall apply only to foreign nationals of the designated countries who, and reading this from the plain language, meet both of these criteria. So somebody who holds a valid visa is, according to the proclamation, able to entry after June 9. We still have to see if somebody has a visa that's valid for 3, 4, 5 years, that can be used. But again, the clarification indicates that it can. Thank you so much, and I apologize for any inconvenience based on this unduly conservative interpretation. Thank you again. Avi, I'm going to shoot this one to you. What are the general conditions regarding the travel ban that was dropped yesterday at approximately 5 p.m.?
So as you can see on the slide, there's 3 main conditions that would make somebody susceptible to the travel ban. Number 1, if you are outside the United States on the day that the travel ban comes into effect, which Bernie said is June 9th, 12:01 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Also, do not possess a valid visa on that day the ban went into effect. And if you have not obtained a waiver under section 3C and D of the proclamation, and we're going to go into those 2 exceptions, which are basically, national interest and Department of Justice related. The other, yeah, go ahead, Bernie.
Yeah, no, Avi, please, outline the current exceptions so people know? I think the exceptions are fairly narrow, but very similar to what we saw last time, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, exactly. The exceptions are very similar to the last travel bans that the administration put out. Does not apply to these following categories: U.S. permanent residents. So you have a valid green card. Really important exception is the dual nationals. So if you are from one of the countries, and we're going to go through the lists of countries in a couple slides down, but if you hold a passport from a non-designated country, you have a valid passport, and you're going to be traveling with that passport, you're not subject to the ban. We have
I want to stop you there. So, my dad was born in Poland. If I was from a banned country and Poland issued me a new passport next week, I'm okay, even though the visa was issued in the, let's call it, bad country. So I could have a visa in a, because that visa is not going to be. How would that work, or we don't know yet?
We don't know, but they do say that you have to be traveling on the passport of the non-designated country. So presumably your visa should be in the other passport that's not subject
So
to.
you'd have to go back to the consulate at the end of the day and get a new visa. This thing of, oh, I'm going to go spend $100,000 and get a Caribbean passport is not going to solve your problem, right? Sorry, I'm going straight into the exceptions, but a lot of people have multiple passports. Thank you, Abby.
But-
Please continue.
So then we have the diplomats and the NATO categories. Then we have what's interesting is the Olympic exception. I think that was not in the last
Don't
travel
forget
ban.
the World Cup, Avi. It's next year.
Yeah,
It's a soccer fan.
the Olympics.
But that's only for athletes, Avi. That's not anyone else, right?
Right. So it's athletics, coaches, supporting staff, and so they limited it.
And immediate relatives. So
Right. And they included other major sporting events to give it a broader scope. Then we have immediate family members, so spouses of U.S. citizens or minor children of U.S. citizen. This is also a new one, which is now they require clear and convincing evidence of the person's identity and the family relationship, and they point to DNA. So this is a new restriction that we have not seen yet. So it's going to be interesting how they enforce that.
So, I mean, let me just understand this in a practical terms. So, this exception basically means that this category of people can proceed to an American consulate and apply for a visa, provided they can show convincing evidence. It's not some automatic exception, right?
Correct. So, I mean, they want to see this is really the child, so that's why they're
It's going
opting
to
for
go
getting it.
through consular scrutiny, is the bottom
Very
line.
very high level scrutiny.
Please
But
continue, sir.
then we have the adoptee category. We have Afghan special immigrant visas, the SIVs, SIVs for government, U.S. government employees, the carve out for immigrant visas for ethnic and religious minorities from Iran. Then we have, very similar to last time, those that have been granted asylum, refugees. I think we're on refugees and those that were granted withholding of removal or protection under the Convention Against Torture. So those were similar terms from the last travel ban. What's interesting is the proclamation does say that no immigrant or non-immigrant visa that was issued before the applicable effective date of the proclamation is going to be revoked based on the proclamation alone. And that gets us into the whole debate on whether somebody who has a valid visa and is in the United States on the date of enactment, what is the risk factor of traveling thereafter? I think right now we're being super conservative, saying if you're here in the U.S. and you're from one of these impacted countries, not to step foot out of the U.S.
I'm going to argue with you, Avi, and say that's not being super conservative. That is correct legal advice at this point. Until we can establish an alternative, there should be, for those corporate employers and your friends and family, a no travel. I know this is tragic. People have family emergencies. It's summer, I realize, but cancel that airline ticket is advice I'm giving today. It's not legal advice, but it's my interpretation. And apparently Avi agrees with me, and I think I'm going to get Ceri over on that bus as well. So let's talk a little bit about the Harvard ban. I said I'm not going to do politics, so I'm really trying hard here. But as the president or chancellor of Harvard said, I didn't look for this fight, it came to me. I believe that this is a shot over the bow for universities. Challenge us. Don't cooperate with us. Don't bend, and you'll see what happens. I also optimistically think that the courts can and should issue a preliminary injunction or broaden the preliminary injunction to include this ban, but I do not, my crystal ball is not working today, so I can't predict exactly whether that'll happen. But Avi, tell me a little bit about what does this Harvard ban do?
So the Harvard ban, which is basically suspending the entry, it's a really broad suspension for foreign nationals that are coming to study at Harvard. Really, it's the F1, as we were joking. We don't think Harvard really issues M1s, but I could be wrong.
For those of you who don't know, M1 is vocational, so that's your hairdresser or hairstyling school, makeup artist. But maybe they have a new faculty I don't know about. But
Well,
that's
it's in there. The Fs are the Ms, and then they also suspended J1s if you're going to be participating in a Harvard-sponsored exchange program.
I want to stop you on that because my first fear was I love bragging. My oldest brother teaches at Harvard, professor. He's a doctor. This doesn't impact the J1 residents, right? Because at the end of the day, they're ECFMG sponsored, but it's on Harvard site. This is an unanswered question for Harvard, probably.
I think so. I mean,
Because I just think of the medical schools, and my brother's at Children's, and gosh, this would be putting people's lives in danger.
the way it reads is a Harvard-sponsored exchange program. So to me, it means a DS 2019 that's issued by Harvard, not necessarily an ECFMG DS 2019
Education
versus
Commission for
your
Foreign Medical Graduates. For
residency.
those,
But well, I guess we'll see how that actually plays out. The other limitation is that it does only apply to new students that are beginning studies at Harvard, and they're seeking admission after the June 4th, 2025 date. As of now, this
I want to stop you there, Avi. I'm slow sometimes. Just help me understand. Only new students. So existing students with a visa are okay.
correct for this particular
So
order.
this is the new kids coming in for the fall semester,
Correct.
but not returning students.
Correct. It's new students.
But the new students, sorry to change the topic, they also going to be subject to extensive security reviews, my guess, if they are, for example, members of the Communist Party or engaged in highly sensitive technology concerning export of sensitive technologies, right? So even though returning students should be okay, they are going to be subject to triple extreme vetting the minute they say Harvard. So these students should be carrying a resume, they should be carrying letters from the employer to show that their work is not a threat to the national security or that they are not engaged in prohibited activity that would make them inadmissible. So
And they should
we're not saying it's a free ride for existing students, but this ban, particular EO, doesn't hit them, but there's other stuff that could impact them, right?
Correct.
There's a section of the proclamation that
Up a little bit, Ceri, closer to the mic.
okay. There's a section of the proclamation that does indicate that the Secretary of State can revoke individuals who currently have visas that are at Harvard. So
Thanks,
that's
Ceri.
into the proclamation.
That's what I was looking for, that elsewhere there is a focus on potential revocations and, yeah, this is, I think, to get everybody in line. Don't cooperate us with us. You'll see what happens. And let's dig into that a little bit more. Avi, what is this? It's a 6-month suspension and then maybe we're okay?
Well, that's how it reads. So it's going to last 6 months, and then they're going to reevaluate and decide how well if Harvard's playing ball, maybe they'll drop it, and if not, they may extend it. So we'll have to see what happens.
So there's a decent chance that, and I'm praying that this is sort of a negotiating tool that is aimed at forcing Harvard to bend the knee, and that maybe it'll go away or maybe it'll be enjoined, but I am sharing that perspective. It's purely speculative. All right, let's dive in a little bit more, Avi. Give me the nuts and bolts of the Harvard travel ban, sir.
Well, I think we kind of covered the gist of it. In terms of the application, again, they have, in terms of the impact and effective date, so it's outside the United States on the day the travel ban goes into effect, which is the June 9th. Do not have a valid visa on the day the ban goes into effect, and no waiver pursuant to that proclamation. So again, there are, we're going to get into details about how these national interest waivers work and who may or may not qualify in a couple slides down.
Thank you, Avi. So I'll go through the so-called rationale. The president has indicated that foreign students need to be people that can love our country. We don't want troublemakers or people that cause trouble. We have lots of people who want to go to Harvard and they can't get in. Strategic. The president has indicated that they have requested information, and I don't know if I can even read this stuff. It kind of just doesn't make me feel well. Radicalized lunatics, troublemakers. Yeah. Okay. I can't even call that rationale, but it's probably marketing or something. All right. So let's talk about the full entry ban, Avi.
So we have a full entry ban for these 12 designated countries. We have Afghanistan, Burma, Chad, Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen. And so this full ban applies both for immigrant visa categories and non-immigrant visa categories. So basically it's suspending admission from somebody who's from one of these countries into the United States. So a pretty comprehensive ban to the U.S.
So Avi and Ceri teeing up. Ceri, you did a run through our database, because that's what good immigration lawyers need to do, to identify people from these 19 countries and provide advice to employers. Obviously, universities should also do the same, identify which people fall into which groups and take action immediately, send out guidance on this. Hopefully the guidance we're giving today is accurate. But Ceri, I think we found that most of our foreign nationals were from Iran, right? We had maybe a smattering of others, but the database report you ran last night indicated that most of these folks were from Iran, and they were the primary people impacted. And then, Avi, I'm going to ask you to comment as a consular specialist. Realistically, probably 90% of the visas issued to this group would go to Iran, because these other folks generally aren't getting visas anyway, right? Or am I just speculating incorrectly?
No, I mean, I agree, Bernie. Probably the majority of folks are going to be from Iran. Somalia, Sudan, Yemen, Haiti, Chad, a lot of these countries are under strict restrictions anyways. Very few folks are getting in from Afghanistan. So, these are smaller countries with not a high rate in general of immigration to the United States, but that's generally speaking. But we do tend to see, prior to this travel ban, a lot of folks from Iran. Yes.
Iran's almost 100 million people, well renowned for its education and focus on education, outstanding physicians, outstanding professionals, and yeah. But Avi, we used to have something called the T3, the terrible
Seven.
threes. It was terrible
Seven, Bernie.
4s, 5s, but
Seven.
that those three were, refresh my memory, Iran,
Sudan was on there. So was the state sponsor 7.
but
Li-
they don't have 7 anymore. I think it went down to 3 or
Lower
4.
down to 5 and then down to 3. And you'll
I
see on the
think
next
it's Libya, Iran,
Cuba.
yeah, Cuba is on the other list though. So, but basically, if you're on the terror list, chances are you're going to get hit, right? Designated terrorist supporting nation. And the others, now I'm from Africa, hurts me because they seem to have picked on a lot of African countries. Burma, we know, Chad, yeah, Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Somalia, Sudan, Yemen. Seems like mainly poor African countries. And there the argument is, according to the ban, high recidivist rates on B2, F1 overstays, over 25, over 30%. I'm not sure whether they got that from a DOS report or whether that was ChatGPT, but I'll keep my humor to myself. How they calculated these nations, because it's very different from the 42 we had round 1. Now we got a pretty similar list, but Ceri's going to deep dive on that. Now let's go to the partial entry ban. And Adi, just explain to us, please, the difference between the full ban and the partial ban, and these 7 countries, which seem a little bit confusing to me.
So we've got 7 countries that are on the partial entry ban: Burundi, Cuba, Laos, Sierra Leone, Togo, Turkmenistan, and Venezuela. The biggest difference, they're both bans cover immigrant visas. The difference with these 7 is that all visas except for the B category, the F, M, and J, are still possibilities. So H, L, O, R, P's. So they're still options for those folks, limited, not as long as it's not a B, F, M, or J. And then the other interesting.
So I want to stop you, Avi, on that point. So let's deal with a hypothetical. Just making stuff up here. So you've got a doctor from Venezuela with a green card who's stuck outside the US. Would you consider filing an O1 if they met eligibility? Because
Wait, Bernie, if they have a green card, they're not subject to.
oh, thank you for correcting me. All right, so let me, dumb question, but my point that I'm trying to make, clearly, is that for people on Fs, Js, so let's take somebody on a J1, maybe they could be on an H or an O, or B. So what the point I'm trying to make is that the full smorgasbord is available. That's A, C, D, E, blah, blah, blah. Can't keep going all the way, but they may well qualify for H's or O's, etc., etc. That's the fundamental distinction.
Correct.
And if they have green cards, they can still come in,
Correct.
but new immigrants cannot.
Correct.
So you had your green card approved, your interview was on Monday afternoon, and adios, goodbye, so sorry.
And you're assuming they can even get in for their interview, so they may not even.
Well, yeah, but if you file an H1 or an O1, they might still be able to come in, but if they got a green card, they can enter.
Correct.
A green card already issued, they can enter. Do you think CBP is going to know all these rules better than you, Avi?
Not likely. It's going to be a learning curve for them. That's
So it's going to be chaos at the airports
very likely.
like it was in the past?
Correct. That I would anticipate so.
And pocket letter is my favorite word that people need to help explain. Not that you get a chance to talk, but it's important to share this information with people because airline staff may not know these things on pre-flight inspection and on boarding. We had huge problems with certain airlines that didn't understand this stuff and just barred people even when they were eligible, correct? I'm just thinking of the chaos of the past years
Yeah.
and the headaches, because maybe we can avoid some of them by alerting to people the problem with the airlines, the problem with boarding, the problem with CBP, etc., etc. Layers and layers of headaches in how to interpret this. Ceri, over to you. I love the colors, very bright. So this explains the transition from the New York Times published this, what, in January?
And
3-4 months ago?
I think it was in March.
March.
Yeah, this is my psychedelic chart.
Closer to
You can't hear
the
me
mic. Thank you.
better? Okay.
Sorry, I'm a pain.
Yeah. So this is my psychedelic chart. It might hurt your eyeballs because it's so bright, but in March, the proposed travel ban was leaked. And so we have this information where, we had the red bar, the orange bar, and the yellow bar, the different categories of travel ban. And this slide just shows the changes. The highlighted in pink countries have been downgraded, so to speak. So they are in the orange travel ban or the partial suspension. And the red highlighted countries have been upgraded, so to speak, and are now under full suspension. And then there's a curious one with North Korea that is missing, but maybe that's just because nobody from North Korea ever comes to the US. So they may have thought that not to include it.
But my confusing thing is this doesn't make a lot of sense. Is this what people negotiated? Is that what have we got? 3 from yellow moved up. How many from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? Wait, Syria is still red, right?
Yes.
Was Syria on the list?
I think Syria is
I don't know if I saw Syria on the list.
okay. Syria should have been downgraded then. I don't even think it's partially banned.
Yeah, I think that's because the president just met with, let me find that slide. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, Syria's not there.
Yeah.
Wow, big one. So meeting with the president can be effective, right?
Yeah, so the status of these countries, some of them were not included. It's TBD on whether additional countries will be added, like Egypt. That has been discussed in the American Immigration Lawyers Association, and there's a lot of chatter out there that it may be added because apparently what triggered this was an Egyptian national who overstayed. So that is TBD, but I think we can go to the next slide and look at some pretty charts generated from Rapid. So like Bernie said, when the ban was announced last night, we did some benchmarking and ran some analytics. The first thing we wanted to do for all of our clients is to generate a list of individuals who were impacted by the full and the partial bans. So we were able to also look at the most heavily impacted countries, and as Avi and Bernie indicated, it's Iran. And then Burma is a not a close second, but it's second. And then you can see the other countries. And what Bernie was referring to at the top of the discussion was that there is a contradiction, or it could be perceived as a contradiction in the proclamation that I've already gotten questions about, because it says that under the scope of the proclamation, it indicates that it applies only to nationals of designated countries who do not have a valid visa. However, in each line item for each country, it also says for the full suspension that entry is hereby suspended. So even if you have a visa, you're not going to be able to come into the United States because entry is suspended. So that should just be really clear uh as a point. And then
But sorry. No, please continue.
I was just going to say, also to tack on to earlier discussion, many of these countries, we don't see that much immigration. I mean, even from Iran, it's single entry visa for 3 months. So these folks really just don't travel that often. But it's time to give them more attention and to ensure that, as an employer, you're compliant. You're reaching out, you're checking to see if these people are in the United States or outside of the United States, and then spending some time with them and advising them on what to do next.
So we have a system called Rapid. It's our technology built on Salesforce. Amazing in terms of extracting data. It's the 21st century way to present and handle immigration cases. Ceri, my prediction is it took you 15 to 20 seconds to press some buttons and produce these colored reports and send out notices immediately. So just doing a big pat on the back to our Rapid team of engineers who've built this. This is what Rapid does, produces these type of colored reports and graphs and tables with the press of a button, and allows us to provide our clients with the best possible information. Now, explain to me, and I said to Avi, like we were talking about the Harvard travel ban, the technology alert list, this used to be called the Mantis visa. And then they had something called the Condor, which was predominantly Muslim. And what were the other animals? The flyover was the Mantis, the technology one.
Donkey clearance.
The donkey, yeah, that's quite insulting. That was a tough one. You can't really, and then there was the Viper too, which is the security one. They still have these, I think. I don't know if they gave them new names. They just don't. Now they call it SAO, Security Advisory, but it used to be the donkey and the Viper. Viper was the terrorist one, I think, or security threat. But there were these 4 categories of visas. So what we do as experts, and Avi, you wrote the leading article on this, it's still relevant, is we're looking at the Harvard students and we're trying to advise them on which groups are more likely to be subject to enhanced scrutiny or impacted by this new EO. And we were able to break them down using Rapid in terms of what their majors are. So if they are in technology, I think there's going to be enhanced scrutiny. If they're in education, maybe not so much. And possibly in biotech, we're looking at sensitive transfers. The government is talking about military concerns. I'm not questioning the government here. I'm just explaining how to do sort of a deep dive on this. Ceri, do you want to comment more? This was your slide.
Yeah. So we did want to identify for employers which of their OPT F1 employees had a Harvard degree. So we really quickly pulled this. We didn't want to put in PII here, so We added the industries, but you can see that these industries, while they have more scrutiny also from the Department of State, these are gonna be the industries that are most impacted, by the Harvard travel ban. And while, again, the Harvard travel ban only applies to new students beginning studies, it also gives the discretion to, the Secretary of State to revoke, visas for existing students. And, we already know that although the cancellation of SEVIS has been enjoined for Harvard students, it's in jeopardy. So it's just going to have the ripple effects across industries for these highly sought after graduates is very clear.
So I spoke about this briefly. So as an employer, if in fact they are engaged in technology, it would be beneficial and preemptive to make sure that their resumes accurately reflect what they're doing, what they're working on in simple terms that somebody like a CBP officer or myself could actually understand. I don't know if the airlines will get it, that this person's um, may be involved in technology, but it's not technology that could be harmful to the security of the United States. Folks, this is not new stuff. This stuff came before 9/11. I repeat, before 9/11. April 2001, 6 months before, we were doing this similar presentation on terrorist threats. Of course, it's enhanced since. But this is the sort of analysis that people need to do. My research is not going to benefit China in the military context. My research is focused on A, B, and C. And look, it's all over the internet. This is widely available information. So please do everything you can to show that the activity which the foreign national will pursue is not going to be harmful to the US in military or security or other such. And of course, there's that whole other area of vetting, which we're going to talk about a little bit more under which we've been doing again for more than 20 years under the form 5535 about social media and security. So we'll get into that a little bit later. Anything to add on this, Ceri? Avi?
I just want to note about the bans in general. We'll see a pause on any immigrant visa.
Sorry, a little closer to the mic.
We'll see a pause in any immigrant visa processing at the consulates in these countries. And so they'll have immigrant visa numbers that'll go unused for this fiscal year that could be added back in to the employment-based immigrant visa numbers next fiscal year. And again, we don't see a ton of immigration from these countries, but there will be immigrant visa numbers that will be added to the employment base. So we could.
Ceri, that's really, I want to stop there and translate that. So after the COVID ban, there were a lot of unused family visas that rolled into employment. And as a result, the India and China retrogression improved dramatically, moving thousands of people forward. So there was this unforeseen benefit that occurred because of the drastic reduction in family visas issued under COVID. So you think there may be this kind of simple ripple effect?
A ripple effect, not a surge.
Got it.
It's not going to be like we're firing on all cylinders, but we'll probably see some advancement.
I love to see the silver lining of every cloud for those poor people sitting, waiting in Never Never Land for their priority date to become current.
I think Charlie and Sharita will probably be talking about that.
Yeah, we have extra, just giving another plug, we do a program called Chatting with Charlie. That's Charlie Oppenheim, former director of the Department of State Visa Control Unit for 23 years, is off counsel or director of visa consulting. So, my second favorite topic. Avi, take me back to September 24, 2017. The fabulous NIE, National Interest Waiver. This is retrospective. We do not know if this is applicable directly, but this is what worked previously. Tell us about 2017. My memory only works for 48 hours at best.
So with the travel ban 3.0, and we're going back about 7.5 years, in the proclamation, similar to the current proclamation, there was an exception if you could obtain a national interest waiver or NIE for national interest exception. And on the next slide, we'll go through how the process works. But this is different from the COVID national interest exceptions, where I think Department of State was very generous in terms of granting NIEs and letting people get visas issued during the pandemic. For the travel bans, which is different from the general COVID bans, it does seem that Department of State's approval rating was low, is very high standards. We anticipate, though we don't know for sure yet, since everything is so new, how the current administration is going to influence Department of State and the Secretary of State in terms of how they will have their approvals or what's going to meet their standards. But if we look back to what we did in the past, and we use that as our roadmap, then definitely we want to have significant evidence in an NIE application for the consular officer's review. And so in an employment-based context, we need declarations from the visa applicant themselves, from the employer, or if they're contracted with the end user where they're going to be in the United States. So we want to see employment verification letters. We want the contracts. It's very important to be able to show the financial and business significance and impact to the U.S. economy to show how that's going to be favorable and why you should be able to qualify for an exception on that basis. What is the national interest? So it could be infrastructure, it could be healthcare, could be in the business sense. Are they going to be granting B visas for somebody to come for an in-person meeting? Probably not too common, but will they
How
grant?
about a crypto conference, Avi? No, that was a joke. Okay, please
That
continue.
worked. It worked during the pandemic.
Oh, it
but
did work. Okay, then crypto conference it is. Sorry, I'm trying to make a bit of light of something that's not light, but
Um, so the key is to really have your itinerary, really present the sense of urgency, why it's so critical that you need to step foot into the United States. Be assured that the consul will ask somebody who's being considered for an NIE to complete the DS 5535 and share all their social media. What we're even seeing now is if social media is locked, they are asking visa applicants to unlock it so that the fraud prevention units can go and see what people are posting on social media.
and Avi, I'm going to share my 2 pennies that nobody wants to listen to, but you know, what happened in Denver is not something to laugh about. We do not want people coming into the United States to commit crimes or terrorist acts. I in no way support that, but it seems to me that possibly that is being used to some degree as a pretext, but it's complicated. So please excuse my terrible sense of humor. It's just my way of getting through on this. My greatest sympathy to the victims of these terrorist attacks. 9/11 was no joke. It changed America forever. But my belief is that the strength of America comes from our Constitution, and I'll stop preaching because I'm not good at it. But please continue with waivers, Avi.
So if you're from one of the banned countries or and you're applying for a visa category that's banned, um, if you don't yet have the valid visa, haven't made it to the US in time, without this special national interest waiver, you're not able to be issued a visa. And so it really is in the proclamation itself. They do use the word, it's case by case. So there's not going to be any two cases that are identical. It gives the consular officer wide range of discretion. So if they want to refuse the application outright, they can refuse it. If they're going to recommend this for a waiver, the path that it's probably going to happen is they will send it off to Washington, D.C., to the visa office. They'll vet it, with the Secretary of State and possibly with the different secretaries of Homeland Security. They boiled it down into two bases for the waiver, and I think this is new. If the travel by the individual would advance a critical U.S. national interest, which involves the Department of Justice, and the example they cited to is when the individual needs to come in to participate in a criminal proceeding as a witness. And then the other one, which we saw in previous versions of the ban, was if the travel to the United States for that foreign national would serve a U.S. national interest. So that's very similar in terms of how they set it up. The DOJ one is kind of a new one, which in and of itself, I think, is a U.S. national interest anyway. So it's a little redundant, but they carve it.
I think it's very redundant. I think it's a handful of people, but the one we've underlined or you've underlined is where I would imagine a lot of lawyers and specialists will be helping advise people. We have, unfortunately, years and years of experience, hundreds and hundreds of these. In the past, Avi, I believe both you and Ceri were saying in the prep that you're close to 100% on these, but we don't expect to be 100% anymore. Is that correct, sir?
I think it's really tough to predict. Again, this administration is tightening the reins, and we don't know where the bar rests. All we can do is prepare as best as possible. And, it's going to be up to the visa officer to make that call and then see if Department of State is going to concur with their recommendations.
Got it. Thank you, Avi. That's Ceri, any comments on processing waivers?
I was just going to say, I think we're very well practiced at preparing these because we did so many of them during COVID. We did hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. So we have the format and the formulation. We know where to get the materials to demonstrate national interest for critical infrastructure, healthcare, et cetera. But these are different times and it's not COVID anymore. This travel ban was implemented for very particular reasons that have nothing to do with COVID. So
Yeah. No,
mhm.
thank you. And we have, long waiting lines, potential staff shortages. Summer is traditionally a difficult time for the State Department because it's rotation time, the end of summer. So it's going to be difficult for people seeking to travel and seeking new visas. So we spoke a little bit about this. I don't know if I missed anything, but Ceri, do you want to summarize what we can do?
Sure, and we're already doing a lot of this, and just by signing up for this webinar today, you all are already jumping on it. So good job. But obviously, we're running reports for country of birth and country of citizenship to identify people that are impacted. And then calling back any individual that's outside of the United States to try and get them back by Monday at 12:01 a.m. But Bernie made the really good point that we expect flights to be sold out. We expect it to be hard to get here by Monday at 12:01 a.m. And then obviously, we've been cautioning against travel since January 20th, but that caution is even more urgent now, especially for individuals from these countries. There could be additional countries added. I mean, that psychedelic slide contains some countries that could still be included in future travel bans, and Egypt is being considered very seriously to be added. And then, we want to look at exceptions. We want to identify which employees and which individuals, students, et cetera, qualify for these exceptions, and then prepare travel letters that call out those exceptions and prepare folks to enter the U.S. accordingly. And then, at the end of the day, if we do need to prepare a national interest exception, we're partnering with you, we're partnering with foreign nationals to get all the information we need in order to prepare the most persuasive waiver imaginable.
Very good. Thank you, Ceri. You're so good with action items. I guess that's part of being a mother. You got to get that job done. I'm not allowed to talk like this, but yeah, thank you so much for your analysis. We would encourage you. We are going to share this PowerPoint with all the people who registered, but we encourage you to sign up for that newsletter. Follow us on YouTube, LinkedIn. That's the general telephone number. That is my email for all complaints. No, wait, we need Avi's for that. And WR Immigration, we are a medium-sized firm of approximately 200 people with 10 offices, trying to do our best with the best possible technology. There's our contact information, folks. Also like to give a little plug for our global division. We handle outbound immigration, which is unfortunately becoming a little too popular. They are heavily engaged, and we're expanding that department because a lot of people are sadly moving abroad for various reasons. And I thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure speaking with you all, and we will send you out both clarification of this issue, number one, and number two, a copy of this PowerPoint, possibly updated. So thank you very much, everyone. Wishing you a pleasant day. The week is not over, but we appreciate your participation and hope you got something out of this, even if there's ambiguity on a critical point. So thank you so much, everybody. I appreciate everybody's time for today. Thank you, and bye-bye.